Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 2 o'clock, a few minutes too late. I would like to start on time, but well, I would like to welcome all of you to our forum, and we're going to focus on the topic of circular economy. And we are now going to focus on logistics. As a trailblazer for the circular economy, I am Johannes Fottner. I have a chair in materials handling, material flow logistics at the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the Technical University of Munich. So you've come here in great numbers to listen to that. It's good luck for you to be here, because now you're going to spend 50 minutes on a topic that is going to affect all of us in the future. So I believe it is one of the most important topics that we have in our economy at the moment. And the good news is that circular economy is not going to question whether it's going to be there. It has to, because it is the foundation for our future economic system. And another good news for those of you who are here and deal with logistics, circular economy is only going to work if logistics is involved. So if logistics is prepared for it and makes their contribution. And in the next 50 minutes, you know that I usually take 90 minutes and I only have 50 today. So in the next 50 minutes, together with a few nice people sitting to my right, I'm going to start the discussion. So this is how it's going to work. First of all, we have two short keynotes. The first one is given by my former employee, still working at the Technical University of Munich, Niklas Maus. The second one is given by Patrick Wiedemann. He's also to my right. And I know that he is the CEO of Reverse Logistics. And he's going to tell you more about himself later. He knows himself better than I know him. It's a great pleasure to have you here, Mr. Wiedemann. Then we have a lady with whom I deal with a lot on the business side. We have Ute Lesch-Gebhardt. She is advisory board chair at Gebhardt Solutions GmbH, and she is responsible for the strategy of the company. And we're also together on the advisory board. We talk about a lot of things, and circular economy is part of that. And I would like to ask you to introduce yourself in the discussion. And then the last person is Mr. Brunot. So at the beginning of the discussion, you can say a few words about yourself to introduce yourself. It's a great pleasure to have these four people with me. And if during the panel discussion, you can, of course, ask a question. Okay, so with that as the facility, I try to talk not too long, and I would like to hand over the floor and also the presenter to Niklas Maus, and I would like to ask him to give the first keynote. Thank you, Mr. Fottner. A warm welcome to everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here this afternoon and talk about this important topic of circular economy. Logistics, indeed, is very important when it comes to the success of this transformation. And now we are going to talk about or hear about that in my keynote and later on in the discussion. Well, first of all, we might have to take a step back. We have to say that 50% of global greenhouse gas emissions are connected to the extraction and processing of resources. So we can change the way our energy is being produced, but still about 50% of our emissions are still going to be there because they are connected to materials. And if we don't get a grip on that, then climate change is not going to be stopped and other crises are not going to be stopped. And 90% of biodiversity losses have to do with mining, extraction of natural materials, and so on. And there is another crisis behind that that we can see here. This is something that we can only avoid if we manage to handle resources in a different manner. So this is the basic idea of circular economy, namely to reduce the amount of resources used by, for example, taking life cycles of products and expand them. But this is not going to be the panacea. It's not only efficiency that we have to focus on or expanding the life cycle, but by closing the cycles, we want to make sure that at the end of the life cycle of a product, we don't throw it away, but use the resources in it again. So with this, we can make sure that we can avoid these consequences. So, in the last few years, we have also seen that there is a huge impact of circular economy on resilience. So, when people talked about circular economy in the past, they often talked about sustainability, CO2, and so on. What we now hear is that people understand that, and we don't have to explain that. Everybody who has experienced COVID, the Suez crisis, the war in Ukraine, and sees how supply chains fall apart and how dependent we are as Europeans from third-party countries, often totalitarian countries, when it comes to supply of critical materials for digitization or the change to green energy. Well, these persons is something that everybody should understand, that we shouldn't do the same mistakes like with oil and gas. Okay, so 2.7% is the circularity gap. So 93% of our economy is still focused on extracting resources and, well, wasting them at some point in time. So this transformation, which is a huge opportunity because 93% of our economic performance has to be moved into the circle. So if we manage to do that, logistics is going to be a huge enabler to achieve that, and we can then achieve a lot. Mr. Fatner already mentioned it. I used to work for him for quite a long time, which is actually not so long ago. So it is still in the TUM, Technical University of Munich design, but you can also see some green icons here. And they bring me to the area where I'm working now in the economic field with startups. So first of all, I would like to explain what the circular economy is and what it isn't. I think this chart is really quite impressive because it tells us quite nicely that it's not just about recycling, it's about keeping the value of products and all the energy that is being used, to not let it go to waste with some processes or whatever, but to make sure that we can keep it at the highest level. And this means that products have to be designed in a different manner, have to be handled in a different manner with different strategies in order to really keep these values. And for that, we have this picture. So we have 9 R's, like manufacturing, refurbishing, where you take an old product, refurbish it, update it maybe also design product in such a way that you need less of them, maybe different business models. And at the very end, and there's something that is going to be, there is recycling. But this is really only the last strategy. Okay, now let's take a look at the next picture, which is a butterfly diagram. And here we have the technical circle of industrial products, but we also have to keep in mind that the biosphere has to be taken into account. And we have to make sure that in both areas the circles work and that we have a circular setup. And with that, our our well-being depends on that. And as I have just mentioned, this is a huge opportunity. Now let's go back to technosphere. So there is also a lot of economic value in products that we can use and make money with. And the industry has understood that in many cases. So if you take a look at what the automotive industry or Knorr-Bremse, for example, is doing for commercial vehicles. So Knorr-Bremse has set up factories in the Czech Republic or Brazil with the only function to take back products and refurbish them. So we have others like Velo, pump manufacturer. I'm not sure if you know them. They started in 2012. There was an export stop from China for magnets, and these are magnets that are needed to create these pumps. So this leads to standstills, or this is also something we experience, for example, in the field of semiconductors. And at that point in time, Velo said we have to make sure that we get our products back, or at least these crucial materials. So this was the very start, and now they try to really keep the whole pumps in the circle. And I have seen that, for example, with Lorenz measurement technology. You can find them here quite close to Stuttgart. So if you take a look at that, the copper price from 2004 to 2007 have been multiplied by 5. And if this is a huge driver for costs, like for Lorenz, this can really have a major impact. So the economic idea behind that was to take the products back instead of going to low-cost countries and keep the value so that we can reduce the costs. And this is what they did, and they changed their economic model. They don't sell maybe their products, but you can rent them or lease them. And this means that the products are used for a longer period of time. And with that, the company has also been able to grow by a factor of 5. And I think this shows it's not just ecology of philanthropy, it's really a business case that we can see here. And another example before I continue, Hilti, it's also very interesting. Michael Porter, Harvard Marketing, there is a quotation that says the customer doesn't want a drilling machine, they want to have a hole in the wall. And many of these service approaches that we see in the circular economy focus on that. Hilti, for example, does that. In many cases, they do no longer sell the drills, but they lease them, in particular when it comes to B2B for craftsmen, the big machines that offer big advantages, like providing the holes in the wall as a benefit to the customer, not so much owning the product as such. And also at TUM, the university, we do many things like that. We have a cooperation with BMW. Here you can also see this circle. When it comes to vehicles, automated de-assembly. So it's intralogistics that comes into play here and plays an important role. And there is a huge level of dynamism. And there are also startups, and this brings me to the company side. We can see great examples. What you can see here are some important ones. Here we have plastics, construction, textile, consumer goods, and we're here going to hear more about lip cycle, for example. So we have, for example, bioplastics, Concula. This is a platform, a marketplace for materials from construction, and moves into the field of digital twins of buildings, because this only makes it possible to do the refurbishment or the de-assembly, air carbon capture. So with that, you can produce new building or construction materials. And we have another company which can recycle materials, Cookie, but like Recap, with a return system with these boxes. Really great startups, Lip Cycle, O2Zero, a battery recycling approach. 95% of lithium and graphite can be reused. And we have done some research. We have identified more than 400 startups in Europe. And here you can see 100 of them. And you can see quite nicely along this value-added chain that we have to focus on different areas in order to make sure that the circular economy is successful. And you can see that in all areas there is a great dynamism and there are lots of startups. And we can see that when we take a look across that 10 years, that the number of startups and also of the capital invested, also for those when it comes to the growth phase, you can see a major increase, 20-25% growth rates. And now let's take a look at the businesses. This is the largest center for innovation and business creation in Europe. So with Circular Republic, the company I'm working for, we try to tap into that. And we want to develop further towards a circular economy, enable, act, inspire. So act, I think, is the most important point. And I think this is missing in some areas. And we have this lack of understanding of awareness. We have an implementation problem. It is really complex. It's a very quick model. But the better the collaboration can be between different actors or players and big companies and startups that focus on individual technologies. This is like a fast boat approach, something that you cannot really implement in bigger structures. Okay, this is everything I wanted to know. Thank you, Mr. Fottner. And now I'm going to hand over to Mr. Wiedemann.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maus, and thank you for this artistic talent of introducing this in such a short period of time. Take a seat now. A very important point here was the last one, is this acting that's at the middle of the slide. And I hope all of you noticed that we as a university, we no longer see our background in exploring something theoretically and then displaying it and then making a publication and leaving this topic again. But with this Unternehmertum, we want to start an ecosystem that can actually move into implementation. That's a very important background information. Thank you very much, Mr. Wiedemann. I can start the same competition and the race here and ask you for your quick keynote. Enjoy. Thank you very much, Mr. Fottner. I'm going to put this timer here because the timing is challenging. When we talk about reverse logistics, you could talk about it for hours and go into detail. And also, it's not getting any boring because it's a highly fascinating topic. My name is Patrick Wiedemann. I'm the CEO of Reconomy Comply Division. And at the same time, I'm the CEO of the Reverse Logistics Group. Reverse Logistics Group, the name really stands for itself because for 2 decades we've been doing everything that has to do with closing cycles and from the beginning to our continuous development. We are part of the overall group and we want to cover all topics that Mr. Maus already pointed out. All the circular devices that are created in this topic will be enabled, as we like to say, and how I, as a manufacturer, as a brand, as an actor, can use solutions in my everyday life. And I am in charge of the medium pillar here, the Comply division. And this year we will be generating 1.2 billion euros. We're a quickly growing company with this market, and the requirements are also increasing. My division and we are dealing with everything that has to do with regulated topics, the dual system in Germany. The packaging system is one of these. We are dealing with these topics worldwide in order to close circular loops. And for the manufacturers, we also derive regulations and obligations and comply with them at the end of life. We also are managers of the deposit system in Germany, and we introduce these systems worldwide in new markets. Our global footprint shows us that it's not just a local topic, but in Europe, of course, we are at the forefront, but we know that worldwide this deal is really interesting, and these global customers want to get standardized solutions worldwide in order to be efficient. So that was the background to my company, but now I'd like to start talking about the challenges of reverse logistics and how we can handle them and what solutions are there. And here we clearly have the approach of saying, what are the differences between the forward logistics and what we know from the supply chains with all its challenges? But what about the reverse logistics cycle? A few key issues here, they differ a lot because in the forward area, I know my product and I know my materials that I need to transport. I know the status or the state of these products and how I can logistically manage them. In the reverse area, I don't know that most of the time. I don't know what form the product from the e-commerce will be coming back from and how many materials I will have in my waste bin afterwards. The packaging conditions are standardized in forward logistics, and in reverse logistics, you often get things back without packaging, and they have a condition that we don't know, or they not packaged at all. The planning issues are much more standardized and penetratable in forward logistics because I know where things come from and where they need to go to. In reverse logistics, we oftentimes cannot really predict what volumes will be coming from where and when a consumer, when someone in the online channel will say, well, the shoes don't fit, I'm going to send them back or I'm going to keep them. So all these topics are much easier to predict in forward logistics than in reverse logistics. And we have in forward, we have standard logistics processes, and in the reverse logistics area, I need a high degree of flexibility. And at the same time, I want to have these processes very efficient. But I have to manage the fact that I don't know the condition of the products and I don't know the materials that I'm going to collect. And the same goes for product quality and, in the end, also process optimization. In the forward area, I know where we have transfer points between individual process steps, and I can even optimize the silo and create efficiencies for the overall process. In the reverse area, I need to have a more holistic approach because things that I get at the point where I pick up the product or collect the material or where I return certain things that I miss in these spots, they will probably have an impact on my recycling or reuse opportunity and also a refurbishment of a product and thus a second life of a product and also the recycling capability of a material. And if in the waste bin, the plastic waste bin, you have regular waste because the other bin was full, then the content of this entire bin is wasted for recycling. And these are effects I need to understand. I need to understand the costs and the effects I have in the value chain of an overall process. And that's the approach that we choose. Now, how can I resolve these issues? First of all, I need a platform management to orchestrate everything. And this platform management needs to get an end-to-end view. Data. That is a key to this process because on a daily basis we can learn from this data for situations which cannot be predicted and in the end will be predictable because I have certain patterns or have repeating conditions, and so I can actually gear up to these processes and respond to them. But I first need to know the condition of the products and materials that are returned. I need to know the costs and the value elements along the entire reverse process. The track and trace, knowing from where something is coming, where is it flowing to, and how do I deal with these topics. And also process tracking, showing me how process efficiency works and is measurable over the entire setup. Digitalization, we talk about this so many times, and here we have a specific use case, how digitalization will become the key to mastering this level of complexity on an everyday basis. And data analytics is something we keep talking about in general. It's about smart data. We have to analyze the right data in the right way to derive the conclusions from them and to standardize processes, even though they are difficult to predict. That's how we imagine our process cycle. That's how we design it. We have a central actor, and we have IT platforms and connections to the individual actors along this reverse logistics chain. And all of them need to be linked up in an efficient process, which will then make it possible to optimize things holistically and driving this process forward to the best possible outcome of this process. And it's always target oriented. We always want to see what comes out of the process. A topical example, we're currently working on this. It's an industry which is not really affected by regulations. That's the textile industry. The European Union agreed on a strategy last year. It was called Fast Fashion Regulation. And they say that we need to handle the entire textile industry differently in the future. The recycling of textile products is 1% worldwide at the moment. And the amount of textiles is enormous. And textiles are very environmentally damaging. From the production to the processing, cotton needs a lot of water in production. Plastics is produced mainly from crude oil. So topics where, when you look at the entire process chain, you are not really environmentally friendly and not ecological. And this topic will then be addressed with these directives. Italy is the first market to introduce this in Europe, interestingly enough. They will transfer this into legislation and make clear regulations as what needs to be done. It's about reporting issues. We need to set up adequate collection networks. So it's no longer the Red Cross or charity events taking place, which of course all focus on what we can still reuse of these clothes, and the rest will be put into waste. But it really needs to make it possible in every village, at every point of sale where I purchase these clothes, I need to return the clothes. So we need networks that manage this topic via retail returns, and the challenge that Zara goods need to be returned or can also be returned to H&M, and that it doesn't matter where you purchase the goods. The task is that you just need to return these and accept these goods. That's a topic for an industry who's not familiar with these return issues yet. We need to also suffer from eco-modulation fees or tolerate them. The target is to increase the recycling capability, but also the reusability. 60% of this regulation is focused on a second use of this, on the reuse of this textile. Bring it to a second-hand market in a regulated way and not in an informal way as it is currently taking place. And the only way of resolving this is to have a consistent process. It starts with the return initiation of the textile. So I need a multi-channel collection solution, so I can cover both the online issues and retail-based returns and municipal collections to return the goods. Everything needs to be in a sorting and registration and grading process, so I know what's coming in what condition and what is the value and to which downstreams can this be passed on to. So the data issue is a big issue here. And last but not least, recycling, but also refurbishment and remarketing. That's where we also need to become active and turn everything in a closed loop with a much higher circular economics than compared to what we have today in our linear textile system. So that's a live example where an industry needs to be dealing with this who's not familiar with this yet. Thank you very much.
Well, I would like to thank you very much. So this was really very informative, and you only took a short period of time. Thank you very much for that. Without wasting too much time, I would like to say a few words. Something that we have heard. There is no other way. We have to do it. We have to do it. There is no alternative. But it is not something that only regulations can help us do. It has to be economically efficient. We need good concepts and good implementation in order to do that in an economically feasible way. The positive news is that most companies that I'm talking about at the moment see higher costs in the beginning, but in the medium term, they see a good economic outcome. This brings us to the discussion round. And in the discussion, I would like to give the two new people in the discussion panel to say a few words about themselves. Ms. Lesch-Gebhardt, maybe you can say a few things. Well, thank you very much. I'm Ute Lesch-Gebhardt. I am head of a 200-year-old family-owned business together with my husband in the sixth generation. And I'm also in the advisory board. And of course, the topic sustainability is something that we can find everywhere. It's not about greenwashing. For decades, we have focused on reusable things even before the term circular economy came up. So we focus on reusable containers and also tracking and tracing. Tracking and tracing is the precondition for creating transparency. The whole life cycle has to be looked into. So with that, the circular economy presented by Mr. Maus can be achieved. I think the shopping behavior in the last few years was that people only focused on the price. And in the pandemic, we had different container prices, a different supply chain, and this made it clear that we need other approaches. And there is also the pressure from the consumer because of climate change focuses more on sustainability. We also have regulations, but I think customer behavior is going to lead to changes. So we are from the field of reusable containers, and I think this is the first step. Digital twin, I think, is the next step, and circular economy has to be economically feasible. Only if there is an economic and ecological benefit, we will be able to implement that. There is no chance to keep that in everyone's head if it doesn't is reflected in the P&L. So circular economy is not a question of the business model, it's a question for the next generations. And I think as a family-owned business in the sixth generation, I can say that we have really decided to focus on this topic. Well, thank you very much. And you might have seen that Mr. Brunotte and Lip Cycle was shown on Mr. Maus' slide. So, Mr. Brunotte, please introduce yourself and your company. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to be here. I'm Philip Brunotte, and I am the founder or co-founder of Lip Cycle. And I used to be a student of Professor Fortnow at Lip Cycle. We focus on recycling lithium-ion batteries of e-vehicles. We want to make it faster, more efficient, which means that we focus on logistical processes, but also on all the other services that are needed. So we start with the pickup, where the batteries are being transported in a suitable box. So we put it into these transport boxes. Then we have a European-wide network of forwarding companies that can deal with these hazardous materials. And for most countries, we want to offer a test for the batteries. We don't have that everywhere, but we're working on that to check whether the battery might have a second life or whether we have to recycle it right away. And then we also look at what the customer would like to have at the end and how we can achieve added value. Can we sell it as second life, or do we have to focus on recycling? Okay, that's it about us. So we see ourselves as a full-service provider with a clear focus on Europe, setting up these networks. At the moment, you can find us in most European countries. We have 14 locations in which we consolidate the batteries, and the circular economy becomes more efficient and easier. Well, thank you very much. I take a look around. I mean, when we have a panel discussion, we also want to have questions from the audience. Do you have any questions? If this is not the case, I'm going to be egoistic and ask questions I'm interested in. I think we've had a quite nice overview. We have seen lots of examples that we are working on, and what was a bit frustrating, the percentages that we heard in the very beginning. So where we are at the moment, our recycling or cycling rates. So I would like to start with Mr. Maus. So you have moved on. You have, well, left me behind. So, Circular Republic, what is their approach when it comes to getting into a circular economy? So, what is their approach? Well, I agree with your frustration regarding these low figures, but if we keep in mind that for about 200 years since the Industrial Revolution, we had this linear system, we had certain framework conditions, we had some kind of pseudo abundance, unlimited resources at our disposal, and also quite cheap. So the newer product was always the cheaper product, which was quite paradox, than to recycle something old. This is now changing because we have a scarcity, we have COVID, Ukraine, and all these things. And we can also see that in terms of figures, and now business cases change. And I'm quite optimistic also because of the reason that now the economic framework conditions go into a certain direction that are in favor of a circular economy. So we're going to see an increase there. At the same time, yes, the regulations are increasing as well. There are different reasons for this. So the big challenge, and we heard about that early on, is that there is the problem of insights and the problem of implementation, because the implementation of the circular economy calls for some sort of simultaneous approach of a different kind than the way we used to produce products and the way we design them and the business model that we are using and how we bring them back. So this is something that you need to tackle simultaneously, and this doesn't work on your own, but only in connection with existing and new partners. So this is the big challenge, and this is what we are focusing on with a Circular Republic. So we are working at Unternehmertum, Europe's biggest center for innovation, and more than 50 scalable startups are coming up every year, so one per week. So basically, one notary appointment per week, and 300 industry partners from the big names down to medium-sized companies. So it's important to bring the right players together so that we understand sector by sector where the problems are and how we can tackle that. We're actually doing something in the field of textiles, but we also have done progress in the field of batteries. BMW is one of our big partners, MAN on the OEM side, and many startups. You've seen that Lip Cycles and others, to zero, for example, and several tons are going to be tackled in the summer. Lithium-ion batteries that we want to use in the cycle as a sandbox model. So there's going to be pilot, and if this works, and this brings us back to logistics. So there are lots of challenges. Who's going to look into that? So how much is it worth? So we're going to look into that, and we try to implement that, and then we try to scale it. Because now we have the small volumes, but over the course of the years, and we heard about that earlier, the quantities are going to increase, and we want to be prepared for that. Well, now the next question to the very right, Mr. Brunot. What are the challenges that you see at the end of a life cycle of a lithium-ion battery, and how can we handle that in order to have a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth life cycle? That's a good question. Well, actually, you have to have a twofold view. The current life and the logistical challenges. Because Second Life is based on the fact that there are manufacturers that get many Second Life batteries and put them together as some sort of storage unit. And for that, the volume needs to be there as Second Life battery. So for Second Life storage units, so that you can operate that, you need about 3 to 10 megawatt hours, and in many cases of the same battery type. And to get these batteries in the right quality from all over Europe from one manufacturer, well, at the moment this is not so easy because we don't have the volume. So it's a hen-egg problem So if we're talking about second life, I mean, many storage facilities or units, well, where we have production scrap that's being used or from recalls. So this is the first problem. We need a bigger market. And secondly, to focus on the logistics perspective, well, Second Life and recycling can be brought together and standardized, where we talked about a collection system of lithium-ion batteries, because when it comes to lithium-ion batteries, there are many regulations regarding storage and handling of these batteries, and this is a difficult process. So if you want to have a warehouse where you store hazardous waste and lithium-ion batteries, then you need that all over Europe. So it's not just national or regional rights, but it's the international and the national law. And to set up these systems takes quite some time and a lot of know-how in the different fields. So these are the biggest challenges, and at the end of the day, I can only say you just have to do it. This is our approach. So we just go out there, we take a look at the challenges, we face them, and we say everything can be solved. But this is actually something that in the past years of my career, this is what I have learned, namely that partnerships are extremely important. So the logistics peoples as well as the customers have to cooperate at eye level so that these problems of the future can be tackled together. It's always great to, set up such a network, but without input and without volume that you need at the very beginning, the investment is rather difficult on the one hand, and on the other hand, people are quite reluctant to make such an investment and invest this time. And time, of course, is another factor. And this is why I'm saying that working together in a partnership is something that you just have to do.
Yes, in science and in politics and industry, we keep claiming to think more disruptively, but disruptive thinking always has the drawback that oftentimes you're in a non-stable condition and you need to continue. And you first have to go through the first phase. Maybe from a very high level, Ms. Lesch-Gebhardt, just a general question, what chances, in your opinion, does the circular economy open up to the macroeconomics now and in the future? I mean, some of that has already been mentioned in your talk, but just elaborate more on that. As I said before, it's a generation task, and our part, and that's why we founded the startup, the Smart Logistics. It's supposed to be manufacturer independent in the area of hazardous good tracking and support you, because only if you have transparency can we optimize processes. Without transparency, without having the state condition monitoring, and the measurement data, this entire life cycle observation, that is the precondition to working on the second life cycle. And that's why we decided that apart our traditional business of producing containers and developing containers and the new development, we want to have a tracking and tracing system that we develop in order to support companies as yours, because they want to react independent of specific manufacturers in the hazardous goods management, and it needs to be a long-term project that actually amortizes. Yes, absolutely. And I can just underline what you just said. It needs to amortize and there needs to be a payback. One of my favorite comments is the internalization of external costs. So we have to calculate things correctly. That's an art. We need new technologies. We need digitalization. But above all, we need processes. And here I'm looking to Mr. Wiedemann, and I would like to refer to his presentation and ask him the question, how can these reverse processes be done more efficiently? What do we need for that? And maybe also based on what Lesch-Gebhardt just described. Yes, track and trace needs to be understandable, the path or the routes that the products and materials take and the return. That's one of the basic elements that we use. We've been using that for more than 20 years in our systems. And at the same time, just to give you a very simple example, we have workshop recycling for large automotive manufacturers in Germany. We have roughly 6,000 workshops that we control in our system and where we do the recycling and disposal. And just switching from having the data and knowing what volume of what material will be created in what workshop. So we have 45 material flows in one workshop. And I can tell you exactly that the workshop at the center of Munich or Stuttgart produces X kilograms of volume of material type A in this period of time, or maybe per day. I know the relevant container, so I can use predictive algorithms in order to tell him when his container will be filled up. We have told them for 15 years, you tell us when the container is full, we're going to come pick it up. And then we started switching the system and said, we're going to tell you when the container is full and you just need to confirm and we're going to pick it up. And with a simple logical switch of a process, we saved 10 to 15% of cost in logistics, because the human factor, the poor people who did the reporting, they always reported too early because they wanted to prevent the container from being overfull, which is of course not helpful for the process. He wanted to resolve his issue. We took this task over from him, and now we're safe and have 10 to 15% less logistics costs, CO2 footprint, everything related to that. That makes it more economic, more profitable, and more efficient. That's just a small example showing you how easy it is to have the right approach of data and connecting that to process control and changing the process and come directly into a more economic state. If I can just summarize this quickly, that's a topic that affects technology. These are processes, and that's a topic that we need to start with, just get going, as you just said. And it's also a topic that has to do with the mindset. What is our mindset? And we in science think that makes it so fascinating because it's such a holistic issue and we approach it from multidisciplinary angles. We heard individual product series. We're going to start doing this. And this topic is going to affect all products. It's going to affect our entire economy and this worldwide. I have received a few signals back then that it's now 14:50 or 2:50. And I would like to first thank the panelists for taking the time that you prepared this and were willing to respond to our questions. Thanks so much to you. A big round of applause for everyone. But I would also like to thank you and would like to use the last half minute. We had careful observers and they saw, when I looked at the banners, that there's an additional logo, not only the TU Munich, but also a second one, WGTL. It's the Scientific Society for Logistics. That's basically the umbrella organization for all conveyor organizations and transport organizations. And I just want to point out that this is a topic that we can only tackle jointly. We have to do it and strengthen that in these associations. We have to do it together with industry and practice, with startups and established companies. I already said a similar thing when I awarded the Best Product Award this morning. That's a topic where we don't need any hidden champions. We need to have visible champions that drive the issue forward quickly. Thank you very much for your attention.